Hi, and welcome to the Keys to Therapy. I'm Samantha, a licensed therapist, and I'm here to teach therapists what they didn't learn in grad school, which is all the important stuff. Today's episode is going to be all about telehealth. So, what's the proper etiquette for telehealth sessions? What kind of policies should therapists have in place? Stuff like that. So I'm going to start off the episode by saying if you're a more visual learner or if you are somebody that likes to have something physically to take away, if you look below the video in the captions, I have a list that I've created of all the points I'm going to talk about today. So if you want to go ahead and opt into that, then you can use that as like a cheat sheet or something to keep to the side as you're figuring out your own policies or you're, trying to decide what you want to put in place with either your own practice or the practice that you're working at or whatever agency you're at that potentially is using telehealth. So keep that in mind as we get started. But yes, so I wanted to talk about telehealth, one, because my practice is all telehealth, and since COVID hit, that's what I've been using, and I think it's amazing. There's so many benefits to it, and, I want to cover those to start with, but there's also a lot of nuances, there's a lot of random things that come up with telehealth sessions that I definitely didn't anticipate. And so I want to cover those too, so maybe I can save you guys some of the awkwardness or whatever else that can happen with these sessions. So first, I know a lot of people had online practices prior to COVID. There was quite a bit of people who were seeing clients virtually, and some people had online only practices and stuff like that. I mean, that's existed for a while now. But when COVID hit, it was like suddenly everybody was online because we had to be. So I know for me personally, I was not a fan, did not want to have to do it. And now I think I would struggle with going back in person every day, all day. This is kind of funny how things turn out, but I think everybody had to sort of pivot, therapists especially went from in-person sessions to suddenly now you're at home and you're kind of in the client's home because you're seeing what's going on in their personal space. They're kind of in your house, so they're seeing what's going on in your personal space. And it's definitely a different dynamic. I personally think there's a lot more pros and cons, but it's really depending on the person. So everybody sort of had to adapt very quickly overnight. I know I did. I was doing telehealth sessions in the office the first day that the group practice I was at required that we did them in person. So I had to be there, and within like 10 minutes, the power went out in the entire neighborhood. So I was like, okay, if I want to see the rest of my clients today, I have to go home. So I pulled a dresser over, propped up the work iPad that I had, and dragged a computer chair into my guest room and did sessions that way with the guest bed in the back and my dogs laying on it in the back, and just sort of figured it out. But it was like, wow, people are now kind of in my house and I'm in their house, and this is very weird. So again, I like it, but it took some time. So if you're new to telehealth, or maybe you've been doing it for a while and you're really trying to figure out what's the best way to make it work, and how do you stay as like ethical and on point as you can when telehealth is a little less formal, it feels like, because you're in someone's house, because it could be laying in their bed doing the session or wearing sweatpants or pajamas or whatever they got going on. You want to make sure that if you're doing telehealth, virtual sessions, whatever you want to call it, online therapy, there's like a million ways to say it, but if you're doing those, you want to know that you are doing it in the best, clearest, most ethical way as possible, because lines do get blurred a little quicker with telehealth than they would in person. So I think it's amazing. Again, it's accessible. I've had a lot of clients who've, even if I was in person, they wouldn't want to meet in person because they meet with me on their lunch break and they're not worrying about driving to an office and driving back home and adding on time, or they're not worrying about taking off time from work. Or I know the parents really like it because they're not having to drive their kids to the office, sit in the waiting room for an hour, and then, have to drive them back home. Their kid could just be in the room and log in, which is great. A lot of the people I've seen really liked it because they can just, like I said, stop what they're doing that day and just literally only have the hour session and then go right back instead of worrying about driving, traveling time, traffic, like all of that type of stuff. And they can access it from anywhere. So that's very helpful. But again, the downside is sometimes some clients, like, boundaries may get blurred a little bit, or they may get a little bit too comfortable, or because they're not having to plan as much around their session like they would have if they were driving in person, things can get a little tricky. So I wanted to cover kind of like the top 10 policies that you should have if you're doing any kind of virtual sessions. And yeah, let's get into it. So the first one would be, and again, I know, preface, some of these are going to sound really obvious, but they're kind of obvious to us. They're not super obvious to some clients. And also, I think sometimes people are going to try to get away with what they can. That's people in general. That is not just clients. You know, that's everybody's trying to take a shortcut. Or people get kind of overwhelmed with what's going on. They're like, oh my God, my session. And so some things may be happening that typically wouldn't. Also, I think sometimes people are so used to now, like, FaceTiming friends and family and walking around the house with their phone and stuff like that, that they're used to blurring lines on the personal side, and that kind of seeps into the professional side. So keep all of that in mind as I'm going over these. You might be rolling your eyes like, why is she talking about that? But trust me, there's a reason I have all of these policies. So the first one is, make sure that your clients know not to drive during the session. I think sometimes clients might be like, oh, well, I've got this amount of time. Like, I'll just, like, run to the grocery store, and then by the time I get out, I can just get on the call, like, and on my drive home. And that's not great. So you don't want them to be driving during the session. You want them to pull over if they have to be in the car. I know that I've had clients who have said, like, I know I'm going to have to go to the grocery store, so I went ahead, I'm on limited time. I parked in the parking lot of the store. I'll just do my session from the car here, and then the second we're done, I'll run in and get what I need to and then go about my day. Cool, don't mind. I have car sessions literally on a daily basis with clients, whether it's their lunch break, they're, you know, stepping out from work for a little bit, whatever it is. So I think you should have some sort of policy about clients not being able to drive during the session, because it's really not safe and you don't want to be held liable for anything with that. So if you can talk to them, all of the things, side note too, all the policies I'm going to talk about, and on the list if you want to download it, have these written in your policies and procedures somewhere. Or if you're working at a place that's not yours and you really don't have a big say over it, write up your own. And, you know, talk to the agency owner or the practice owner or whoever else that's in charge about being able to send this list to your clients so that they have it in written form, but also in the first session or before you do any telehealth with them, talk to them about the policies verbally too. We know people don't read everything, and we send them so many forms when they have their intake that I know most people are like, sign, 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 and that's it. So talk to them about that. Because next thing you know, you may be like 5 sessions in and things are going well, and then they log in and they're driving. So cover you on both ends, written and verbal. Another one is make sure that your client has full privacy. Make sure that they know that, and make sure that you are enforcing that. Because sometimes clients will be like, oh no, it's cool that I'm in Starbucks. It's not a big deal. I have my AirPods in. And you're like, okay, maybe it's not a big deal to you, but like as I'm talking to you, people are hearing what we're talking about. I keep seeing people walk by, just like my dog is. You know, there's just lots of stuff that is not exactly a conducive environment, especially if they're going to be talking about trauma or family dynamics. You don't know how loud they are in the coffee shop. You don't know who else is hearing. Like, they're going to be limited with how much work they can do and how much they can get out of the session. And if they're not limited and they're just out here sharing everything, like, that's not the best use of therapy and your consideration for their privacy, even if they don't have as much consideration. So make sure that they know that they need to be in a public place. Maybe if they're sitting in Starbucks, you ask them to go sit in their car for that hour that they're doing the session, so that at least that way there's some semblance of privacy there. Nobody's eavesdropping. And, you know, sometimes people say, like, they'll log in from the couch and, like, somebody's in the back cooking dinner. No, like, no, they need full privacy. So make sure you're talking to them about that being a requirement. That is not a choice. That is a requirement. Another one, and I'm serious about this one, but another one is to ask clients to be fully dressed for the session. So, You may be rolling your eyes until it happens to you. And someone logs in and you're like, ooh, okay, this dude doesn't have a shirt on. Or this person's changing in their session. And they're like, no, it's cool, I have a sports bra. No, girl, like, log in when you're fully dressed. Or say, like, I have to change really fast. Let me put my camera over here, turn my camera off, and then I'll be back in 20 seconds, but I can still hear you. Whatever it is. Like, you may think, this is crazy. Who would do that? People are doing it. People are changing in their sessions. I had a client once who, for some reason, her husband logged in to the session using her phone, and he's in bed with no shirt, just like hanging out. And I was like, what is happening? And he was like, I'll go get her. It's not like the phone rang. Like, you have to log in. Whatever. So I had to talk to her about, hey, make sure, one, the privacy one, the people aren't on your phone and coming into your session. And also, maybe that they have some clothes on. So would love that. Also, if you work with really young kids, sometimes they don't really have some of those inhibitions. They might be like, oh, you're okay. And just like change and let me put on my costume or whatever they have going on. And you're going to have to talk with them and the parents about that. So let that be known. Please come to the session fully dressed. And on that note, the next policy is don't make sure clients know, again, sounds stupid, but it happens, not to bring the phone, the computer, even their AirPods into the bathroom. So you can let clients know it's great that you're home. One of the perks is that you can just use your own bathroom. But if you have to go to the bathroom during the session, just let me know. Leave your computer somewhere. I'll look at the wall. Leave your phone down. I'll look at the ceiling for however long you're in the bathroom. Don't bring your AirPods so I don't have to hear it. And go run to the bathroom. I'll be right here when you get back. People get a little too comfortable. And next thing you know, they're talking to you. They're walking around the house. They're putting laundry away. They're doing dishes. And then they're in the bathroom. So if you are rolling your eyes at this moment, trust me, this happens. And you don't want it to happen to you. So try to get ahead of that one if you can. And let clients know, like, I want to know a lot about your life. I want to hear what's going on in your personal life. I don't need to see some of the things that are going on in your life. So let's leave that out of it. Trust me, you'll be grateful later. Another one is, and this one I've had unfortunately come up, but tell clients that they can't record the sessions. That should be in your paperwork anyway, regardless of if you're doing telehealth or not. But let clients know that they can't record the sessions. Sometimes because it's on the computer, it's not like you're seeing the recording device. Or some people I've seen on TikTok and stuff like that, that they may be like on their computer having the session, but they're recording it on their phone so that they can remember it later. And maybe there is some part of that that's true, but that feels like a violation as a therapist if you're being recorded and you have no idea. So if you know you have a client who maybe is like neurodivergent, or maybe they have a difficult time retaining certain information, talk to them about alternatives to doing that. Whether that's them taking notes, or if you want them to be present and you're willing to do this. I know I have one client I do this for. She really wants to be present during the sessions, but she asks that after, if I can send her a quick recap, just a few bullet points of the main things that we talked about or the main stuff I want her to work on in between, I do that. So I obviously can't do that for every client because we already do a lot of documentation typically with therapy, but talk to clients about what it is that they need, or if there's something specific to your population, figure out if there's some other way to incorporate that so that they understand that they can't record you. And that nobody else can record you either. And this is big for parents with kids, because I've seen, like, parents whose kids are in therapy, because I've seen in a lot of these like Facebook groups that parents are recording their kids' sessions and the kids don't know about it. So try to protect yourself legally, and have that in written paperwork. And again, verbally discuss that with them, that they can't do that, especially if you're in a one-party state, that they technically don't need your consent. Have that be part of your paperwork, that maybe they'll be discharged if you find out that they've been recording sessions, because that's just not cool. And there's other accommodations that can be made if they're having difficulty with that. So have that in there too. Another policy, again, you might be thinking, what? Make sure clients know that they can't drink during the sessions. I've seen some clients be like, cool, let me pour a mimosa. No, no, what are you doing? Or maybe it's happy hour somewhere, but not during our session. So you don't want them inebriated or potentially like drinking alcohol during the session. Now, cigarettes or vaping, I don't mind if they do that. And that's a personal preference. Some clients are like, no, I mean, some therapists are like, no, I want my client to pretend that we are physically in the office and follow all the same boundaries. And that's fine. That one's definitely your preference. I have certain clients, a few parents I can think of, that tend to sit outside during the sessions, especially now that it's summer and kids are maybe home, that they got their kids in the house and they're sitting outside for a session and they're going to smoke because their kids aren't around. Or maybe they're talking about something that's really traumatic and stressful, and that's their coping. You know, if that's what they want to do, I mean, they're at their house, there's going to be limitations to how much I can enforce. And drinking definitely is one to enforce, but smoking or vaping, for me personally, I don't mind if clients do that. But let them know whatever your preferences are. And drinking for sure across the board. Shouldn't be doing that during the sessions. Another one is to make sure, or have clients talk to them about making sure their devices are fully charged before the session. Because people in general can be kind of bad about that, but you don't want to be in the middle of a session and a client's like, oh my God, I only have 4% left on my phone. And you're like, all right, well, you could either like bring it to the wall and like we'll just sit on the floor and do your session that way, or now we're cutting it short just because you didn't plan ahead. So I would definitely talk to clients about that. I can think of somebody that I'd seen in the past that was like, I always forget to charge my phone. And I'm like, well, then it's going to die. Or you're going to be sitting in like this really awkward position depending on where your charger is, or switching devices midway through, and now you're losing time. So, and for me being private pay, you're getting charged the whole hour because I reserved the hour for you. So if your phone dies at 30 minutes in, that's on you. With insurance though, that can make a big difference, because with the codes you have to use, sometimes a 60-minute session to a 30-minute session, you could be getting paid half the amount or potentially even less than that. And that's going to really hurt if that client is not only not getting the most out of therapy, because a 30-minute session, kind of just like checking in at that point. You're not even getting to do as much of the work as you'd want to. But also now as a therapist, you're getting paid less because they didn't charge their devices. So emphasize that. Let them know, like, you guys need to have this charged before sessions, and even remind them at the end of a session if you know that they're having trouble in this one. Like, please charge your stuff. Set an alarm right now, an hour before, that you're going to charge it before next appointment. So emphasize that. Again, may sound like, duh, why wouldn't you have it charged? We're people. And like I said, if some of my clients are at work and they're coming to the car by noon, maybe at noon, like, their phone's half dead because it's halfway through the day. And Google Meet, Zoom, whatever platform you're using, it's going to drain their battery a lot quicker too. So keep that in mind. Another one, and kind of goes in line with that, is I always tell my clients, especially because I do video consults too, so I'll put that in the paperwork, like, download the app or have the link ready before the session starts. Because it's so frustrating sometimes that you're sitting there waiting for the client, and like 5-10 minutes in, they're either emailing you like, hey, I can't find the link, or they just, you think that they're no-showing, and really they were having a tech issue that they didn't tell you about. So talk to them about, like, and like I said, I put this in an email before even the consult call so that clients know ahead of time, but let them know, like I know I use Google Meet, so hey, if you download the app, then anytime that we have a session, the link will just auto-populate in there. So if you can have the app prior to us meeting, you'll be good to go. And that usually cuts down on time, especially if you have a recurring appointment and now the client switches. That's now a different link than they typically would use. So even if they bookmark that link, if they're using a computer, that link's not going to work if we're meeting a different day and time. So yeah, have them download whatever app or platform that you use so it saves time. It really, really sucks when a client is late and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I had so much to talk about today, and now it's already 10 minutes into the session and they lost that time that was really valuable for them. So emphasize that too. make sure they're downloading the app or have the platform saved or whatever it's going to be for you and what you use. Kind of along those same lines is have a plan for what you're going to do if there's connection issues, because it doesn't fail. Sometime there will be something that's going on your end or theirs, and the platform's not working, or their computer's updating randomly, and now it's like, gonna take 20 minutes to log in, or I don't know, there's a storm and the Wi-Fi is kind of crappy that day, or the app froze, or you're in the middle of a session and now all of a sudden, like, you can't see or hear them, and you want to go over some of those tech issues before you even really get too much into therapy. I have a form, like technological assistant something. I can't remember. It's like TAC. Consent, I think, is what it is. So it's technological assistance consent. And it's kind of like, hey, here's the steps of what we'll do. So I have an entire separate form for tech issues, but I also have an all telehealth practice. So I wanted to cover that. And like I said, it's written. And then I also discuss it verbally. Like, hey, if you ever freeze or I ever freeze, the best thing to do initially is to both of us log out, and then we'll log back in and hopefully reset the connection. If we are having any issues, I will be the one that calls you, because my work phone's on Do Not Disturb all day, so I won't even see if you call me. So let me call you. What's the best number to call you at? Or even sometimes, I'll email the client if I know that there's somebody who has those notifications. I don't personally use texting with clients. In situations like that, it probably would be helpful because it would get the text right away. But I would rather just call and troubleshoot on the phone than back and forth messaging. I know some platforms like Google Meet, for example, there's been some times that it's worked really well, and then halfway through the session, something happens, the Wi-Fi is going out or whatever else, and clients can connect through the same link, but with the phone. So we don't even have to call each other. They can just turn the video aspect of it off and connect through a call. So I can't see them and they can't see me, but we're still using the same Google link. So just have a plan for how you'd want to operate, who's calling who, because I don't know if you guys have ever had this happen with a regular phone call, but it drops and now you and that other person are calling each other back and nobody's getting through. It's busy or it's just ringing, and it's really irritating. And as a therapist, when you're sitting there looking at the time, you don't want to be wasting time playing phone tag or trying to figure out okay, the client had this number, but that one's old or whatever. Consistently check in with them about their phone numbers. You should be doing that anyway, every 6 months or every year. Is your address right? Switching up the demographics and making sure all of that still fits. But you need to have a plan for how you are going to handle any tech issues. So I know a lot of my clients know, if it's frozen, let me get out of the app and come back in. And that usually works. And if for some reason it doesn't, then we know that they can log right in on the phone call part of it, or I'll call. So there's multiple ways that we can fix it, because you can definitely get panicked. I know I did in the beginning. When any tech issue, I was like, oh my God, what do we do? Because I was still figuring out how to use everything anyway. And it was messy. So trying to save you guys. So do that. The last big point is make sure to talk to clients about being on time. Now, I know that may sound, again, like another, why wouldn't you? But if you were in an office, clients could just walk in 10, 15 minutes late, 20 minutes late, if you allow them. So, or maybe they're at the front desk and they're like, I showed up, I'm here. And you're still sitting in your office, unless they were the last person of the day and then you were like, oh, I'm out. But for the most part, you're still sitting there and you could have a shorter session. With telehealth, depending on your setup. So I have my office in my house, but upstairs in a different part of the house. That's strictly an office. If I'm not working, I'm not in here. So I close the door, because I personally, and I'll do a whole video probably on that, but I like that separation of this is work. And if I'm already going to be working from home, I want it to feel like I went to an office. I don't want to look at this room unless I got to grab something really quick. I don't want to be in here unless I'm working, because that's mentally what helps me to have a separate space. And so if a client is late, I probably am downstairs now. I'm outside with the dogs on my phone. I am eating lunch early, whatever it is, I'm not going to be as accessible. So talk to your clients, figure out for you first, and then talk to your clients about what that policy is going to be. So personally, what I do is if it's around like 7-8 minutes, somewhere around there, and the client still hasn't logged in, I call them. I hate the phone sometimes, but I just directly call them. And if I get them on the phone, I'll talk to them about like, hey, like, are you going to log in? What's going on? And we figure out what's happening. If I can't get them on the phone, I'll leave a voicemail that's like, hey, I'm going to sit on here until 15 after. And if you haven't logged in by then we need to reschedule. So say they haven't logged in at the 15 after, I'll email them. Hey, left you a voicemail. You didn't log in. Here's the other open times I have this week. If you can't make those work, then I'm charging you for the no-show today. Hope to hear from you by the end of today, because my system charges at night. So like I can't be sitting here for like 3 days wondering if you're going to schedule or if I'm charging you. I don't like all the admin stuff. I don't like all the back and forth. So, but I have very clear policies, and I, in my email, give deadlines. So love deadlines, very clear boundaries. So you want to know that your clients understand, hey, if it's 20 after and I'm like, hey, I'm on the link, and your therapist might be out. I'm not sitting in an office just waiting for you. I'm done. I'm throwing laundry in. I'm doing whatever else I got to do today because you didn't show on time. And I sat here for 15 minutes waiting for you and called. And how many reminders do these clients get? Depending on your EHR, like I use Simple Practice, they get a lot of reminders. They could get texts, they can get emails. If they have a regular appointment time, like, come on. So I think for you, understand whatever you want that time limit to be, what your waiting period is, and convey that to clients early on. Because sometimes they think, well, we're just at home, or we're already, some people are doing telehealth in an office, right? Like you're already in an office. So like, it's not a big deal. But if you're not on that period, I'm out. I'm not sitting in this room waiting for you, or sitting here for another 40 minutes or plus, whatever, waiting for the next client. I'm doing something. So let clients know that so they understand from the get-go. Like if you log in late, I probably won't even see your email because I'm not sitting here glued to it. And have that be a boundary. And if you set it from the beginning, it's going to be a lot clearer for clients and hopefully less of a headache later on. So you don't get too many people like, oh, I just saw your email, I'm in the link, and now it's 30 minutes late. So have all of that in place, again, in writing and verbal too. So like I said, biggest points that's about 10. And again, the list is underneath in the captions if you want to download it. So you don't have to sit here and take all these notes for these. But go over these rules with clients at the intake. Like I said, verbally talk to them about it. You know, it doesn't need to be a huge long speech or lecture, but just like, hey, since we're going to be doing telehealth sessions, really quick, I just wanted to go over some of the rules and explain it to them. If you work with clients that you think would maybe respond better to have it in writing, do like I did and have an entire telehealth consent form with all the rules, the background, you know, here's the backups for this and the troubleshooting for that. Another one too, I guess, would be to have 2 platforms. So if you need to use like the free Zoom, which I think is only for like 40 minutes, but and Google Meet or whatever else. Sometimes it's cool to have like a backup for telehealth as well. But yeah, understand what that's going to look like for you so that the client knows, so that they're not sitting on the other end panicking too if there's a tech issue, that they're like, okay, well, this isn't working. I'm going to click out and back in. Like they understand exactly what steps to take to try to fix it. And that'll help their anxiety too. But yes, go over all of the rules, talk about it, have them be as clear as possible. Another thing would be like to periodically review them, because like I said, the first few sessions, as clients maybe aren't as familiar with you, they're not as comfortable in therapy yet, they maybe are a little bit more anxious. Once you develop more of that rapport and clients are more comfortable and they are maybe a little bit more flexible too with what they're doing, if that's the case, then sometimes those boundaries get blurred. And like I said, next thing you know, your client's changing, or they're answering and they're like, hey, I'm in bed. And you're like, cool, you could be in bed, but like, make sure you're dressed. And figure out what that looks like for you. Some people are like, no, I want my clients to take the therapy appointments really seriously, and so I want them to be sitting on a couch at a desk, whatever. You can be however strict you want to be with it, but having clothes on during the sessions like the bare minimum. So periodically review it with your clients, because again, a few months in, they may start getting kind of lax with the boundaries, because now they're more comfortable with you. They've shared more. They're walking around their house. I know some people, I don't mind if a client has the phone or computer propped up and they're folding laundry for a few minutes of the session, or I've had a few that have been like, I just got home and I'm putting groceries away, can you give me 5 minutes, I'm just gonna leave the phone here. And I'm like, that's cool. You logged in on time, appreciate you. But figure out what exactly your boundaries are. How strict do you want to be? But you need to have some boundaries in place, because if you're too lax with it from the get-go, it's going to spiral really quickly out of control. And now they're walking around the house talking to you and you're like, I'm getting motion sick. So figure out what that would look like for you. And like I said, periodically check in, because the first session, they may be so anxious or so overwhelmed with how much they want to share or how much information you're sharing that they don't take everything in. So I'd periodically be like, hey, just quick recap of what the policies are. Especially if one client violates them, that's usually my signal to be like, let me go ahead and remind everybody this week about what's acceptable and what's not. So do that. And the last point of all of this today is be prepared to set boundaries, but then also enforce them. And those conversations can be really hard for therapists sometimes, because you don't want to hurt the relationship with the client, or you don't want to make them feel bad or awkward, or feel like you're a mean person. But if we are not setting the boundaries with clients and enforcing them, we're really not setting that great of an example. So when you are putting some of these policies in place, if you're not enforcing them, then they're pointless. So for example, the one I think that people have the hardest time with as therapists is the late one. So if a client's late and we're here waiting for them, and then they're like, hey, but it's 12:30 now, I'm so sorry I'm late, I logged in. If you don't want to, or you can't, or you don't think it's worth it to log in and have a 30-minute session, then reschedule. If you've set that policy from the get-go, then the client will understand, hey, if you don't log in on time, it's possible you're going to get charged. Obviously, if there's like an emergency or something, you can make exceptions, oh, my car broke down, or someone just hit my car, whatever's happening, right? Like my power went out, stuff like that. It's like understandable, be flexible, but you need to have like a basic set of boundaries and be prepared to enforce them. Because if you don't, and you constantly let your clients do some of these things on here, like maybe they're always driving in the session, or maybe they are constantly like walking around during the session, or their phone's always dying, or whatever it is, then if there's no consequences, they're just going to keep doing it. So you have to get comfortable with setting the boundaries and kind of more importantly, enforcing them, even if it's awkward conversations. I know what helped me a lot in the beginning was having therapist friends who'd be like, no, you should totally charge for that. You have to. Or no, they were in the wrong because they didn't log in, and you can't sit at the computer for 30 minutes watching your face, waiting for them to come in the session. Set that limit. And kind of have like therapist accountability buddies who will help you when you are feeling a little like, about enforcing certain policies, or if clients start getting mad at you for doing that, and then you're like, was that the right choice? So I hope that you guys all have a therapist network out there, even if it's just one other person that you can talk to about some of this stuff. But to wrap it all up, because I know it's a lot of information, have some kind of telehealth etiquette set up. Understand where your comfort lies. And there may be things I didn't cover today. There may be some random situation that comes up that you were like, oh my gosh, because it's how I figured all these out, right? Besides like the basics like alcohol or being dressed. Some of these I was like, oh, I didn't know that this was gonna be an issue, but here we are. So let's cover that. Let's update some paperwork. Let's talk to all the clients about that, because sometimes you don't know till you're in it. I was with a group this morning of therapists, and one of them said, yeah, my client just prop the camera up and then started changing her kid's diaper, like in full view of the camera. She's like, I didn't even know that I should be telling clients, hey, probably don't change your kids' diapers where I can like see everything. Just go ahead, put the phone down. And I was like, I wouldn't have thought about that. So there's another one, I guess, on the list. But yeah, there's going to be some stuff that's a little bit weird and a little bit awkward with telehealth, but overall, it can be really great. Like I said earlier, super accessible for clients. I've found that the show rates are way better than they were when I was in person, right? There's no like traffic jams or like certain things that may have happened more frequently when I was in person. Attendance overall is better. I found that parents are more willing to let their kids come to therapy and continue therapy because they're not carving out so much time. Or if you have like kids or teens or even adults that are just involved with a lot of activities, or their parents and their kids are involved in a lot of activities, it's really great. Totally love telehealth. Don't even know if I would ever go back to in person. Probably never full time. But if you don't have these policies in place, you're not going to love telehealth. You're going to see that there's a lot more issues with it. So I hope that this video today helped you kind of put together some ideas of what you do and don't want when it comes to a telehealth practice or sessions. And maybe will help make a little bit of your boundaries or policies clearer. So if you would like to sign up for my email list, I'm going to be doing a lot of really cool stuff coming up. So that link is below. If you want to subscribe to my channel, that would be amazing. And go ahead and do that below as well. And you can stay on top of future episodes. And I got a lot of things scheduled coming up in the next few months with a lot of really cool guests talking about some great topics. So stay tuned for that. But other than that, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.